For longer term, there is explicit interest. We actually call them notes receivable. There's a mother of all asset efficiency ratios. It's called total asset turnover. It's basically simple. I mean, I'll write the definition in the notes too. You take the net sales, you divide it by total assets. Where are we? Up there. And there's a related concept we have. It's called capital intensity ratio. It's exactly the same information, just looking at different ways. Total asset turnover tells you how many dollars of sales do you get per dollar of asset. Capital intensity ratio says how many dollars of asset do you need to generate $1 of sales. It's exactly the same information, it's just a different way of looking at it. And with capital intensity ratio, you can actually do some funny stuff. You can say short-term capital intensity. And you could call that sales divided by current assets. Write that down, right there. This basically says, oh, it should be the other way around, I'm sorry. Now I will be civilized, and I'm going to do that one over that. This says, in order to generate $1 of sales, I need only 12 cents of current assets. That's kind of important, especially for working capital management, because that's what you need to fund to support the sales. So for each dollar of sales I want to make, for each $100 of sales I want to make, I need $12 of current assets. So that's a nice little information. And you could also do long-term capital intensity. That would be 1 over sales divided by net fixed assets. So come here, sales. Let's divide you by net fixed assets, which is, I'm gonna take total assets minus current assets. And it should not surprise you at all. If you added those up, you're going to get exactly capital intensity ratio. So you could actually decompose capital intensity ratio into different asset types. You know, short term is one. Then I'm looking at long-term capital intensity. There are certain long-term assets that I don't particularly care about. For example, goodwill. Okay? Goodwill, I've already spent the money, it doesn't require any financing. Let's look at the goodwill for Walmart. Yeah, that's 28 billion. I mean, that's about 12% of the total assets, or about 25% of fixed assets. So if I'm actually evaluating performance of different types of assets, all I have to do is calculate the capital intensity ratio for all of them. They actually add up to total capital intensity ratio. So then I can say, okay, I need $12 of current assets, $500 of plant property equipment, what have you. It's a nice thing to decompose those. We will also look at payables turnover. And that would be cost of goods sold divided by accounts payable. So basically, how long do you get to pay your bills, if you think about it? So let's calculate that for Walmart only. So I have only 15 minutes, and there's 2 more things I want to cover. And where are you? Well, let's do it for Kroger. Kroger is feeling sad that it's being left out. I'm gonna get cost of goods sold, that divided by from the assets or financial statements. Oh, it was on the other side. Where are you? Trade account payables, that's it. Of course, you can calculate that over 2 years. And days sales in payables, as you may have guessed, 365 over that. So it takes Kroger about 3 weeks to pay their bills. If you think about it, and when you're valuing a retail firm, the first thing immediately you're going to think about, if interest rates rise, everything else being the same, is that a good thing for a retail firm or bad? What do you think? This is not going to show up in quizzes or anything, but it comes up in life. These guys take 3 weeks to pay their bills, but they collect their money in 5 days, okay? What happens in that 17 days? They get to keep the money and invest it somewhere, so they earn interest on it. So if interest rates go up, they're gonna have high interest rates. Or if interest rates go down, they're not gonna have as much. This is known as the float in financing industry. For example, when you do a traditional transfer from one bank to another, it typically takes about 5 business days. Technically speaking, the money moves from your account that day, and it shows up in the account of the receiving bank that day, because they do it through a Fed wiring system, Fed supports. But in the meantime, your bank actually keeps that money in a separate account for 7 days or 5 business days. That means they're not paying an interest on it. It's called a float. You know, one of the things that relationship manager is expected to do in a bank is to generate as much float as possible, especially from corporations, because that's free funding for all the assets. We got about 15 minutes. Let me kind of got you started for what we're going to do on Tuesday, the profitability ratios. The first thing we're going to do is profit margin. These are all margin ratios that has net income on the numerator, but something else in the denominator. Profit margin is net income over sales. This basically says for every $1 of profit, sales, how much of that you get to keep after you pay off all the costs. This is also known as PM. Sometimes we also look at the so-called gross margin. This is sales minus cost of goods sold divided by sales. That's how much you get to keep of each dollar of sale before you paid for anything else. I mean, you deduct the cost of goods sold. You have something called operating margin.